Twitter.
I know, right?
Classic.
Oh.
I got to stop adding that one to the stream link.
Can you see this, or are you doing the same thing I'm doing?
No, I'm not doing it. I think we are live, though, at least on LinkedIn and YouTube.
I think we are, too, yeah. I think we are. We are live on Dude, What's the Bid? Episode a lot. But what is today? Like 20? 21?
21, I think.
21, yeah. I think it's 21. So episode 21, Dude, What's the Bid? And we're going to talk a little bit about, of course, about the freight market, about some rates, about hurricanes, right? The impact of hurricanes. Casey's out in Jacksonville, waiting for the hurricane to come in. Casey Lorcan with Farelanes, myself, and Kevin Hill with Brush Pass Research. We have a great guest that we'll bring on in just a second, Trey Griggs of Beta Consulting. But first, let's talk about hurricanes. Casey, or do you have 6 months worth of canned food prepped? Do you have all the essentials?
To be completely honest with you, Kev, I'm probably a little bit underprepared. I have a little bit of time, thankfully. Storm coming in, making landfall. I guess the projection is sometime this evening. But I was driving home yesterday from Charlotte, North Carolina. Spent a good bit of time on 95, headed southbound yesterday, and there's astonishing amount of tree crews, cherry pickers, the mulchers, all kinds of electric crews coming down, and everywhere I looked, there was a generator on a flatbed. I saw one generator, Kev, that had literally tank treads on it, and it took up the whole step deck that I drove by. So the staging is indicative of I don't know if all those guys would be repositioning if this thing wasn't going to be a serious hurricane. And I don't know. I saw Jason Miller this morning made a post on Tanner DeHart's LinkedIn post, saying the only hurricane on record to ever, flip the freight market, have enough of a sustained impact to really change the market dynamics was Katrina back in 2005.
Yep.
But I don't know. You parlay a hurricane with a potential, or I don't know, maybe even impending strike on the East Coast and Gulf ports. Interesting time.
Yeah, no, I know in what was it, 2017, the dual hurricanes, Harvey and Harleen or whatever. I can't even remember the names of them anymore. ELDs was what really shook the market, but that didn't help the two hurricanes in the same week.
Right.
But yeah, Katrina would definitely do it. Interesting fact, I did write out Katrina. Katrina, yeah. Not in New Orleans, right? I was in Boca Raton. When it came ashore in Florida, you forget that. It came ashore just barely. It barely made Category 1 as it came through. I was down doing some training in Florida. It was my only hurricane I've ever been through. It went through Florida, regrouped in the Gulf. The rest is really history, right? It went from barely a hurricane, a baby hurricane, you might say, to the mother of all hurricanes, right? As it crossed the Gulf. So,
right, yeah,
it was interesting though.
It's crazy when those things, pop offshore, are able to gather some air from the ocean, and if they just hang out over a metropolitan area and dump a lot of water, I think that's when things get crazy.
It does, yeah.
The wind speeds, right, are kind of scary, but I think the water is the real impact if there's a bad storm surge. I can't remember what hurricane it was. One came up the East Coast when I was a kid, and Baltimore City entirely flooded. I went down with my twin sister and my dad, and some guy in a Jeep trying to drive down Pratt Street in 3 feet of water. Even the Jeep couldn't make it through. We're a couple folks out on kayaks that day, from what I remember, though.
Cool. Yeah, I know. It'll be an interesting storm. Let's bring on Trey. See if Trey's been through a hurricane or not. I don't know. He's from like Missouri, like Kansas City and St. Louis, so maybe a
Gentlemen,
tornado.
what's up?
You
It's
been through a
interesting.
hurricane?
As I was listening to you guys talk about that, it is interesting what makes our ears stand up depending on where you live. Because whenever hurricanes come in, even though I know that they're severe and they're devastating, it's not like a threat, because by the time they get to Missouri, it's usually just a little storm. It might affect the precipitation or the humidity a little bit, but it's not anything that we worry about. But somebody says tornado, and I'm like, ooh, where is that? Because that's something that is possible here. The thing about a tornado that's interesting is that, one, you can't really prepare for it. They kind of give you a little bit of maybe, like there might be something, but there's not a lot of preparation. And usually they're so targeted that the likelihood of it hitting you is so low that you're concerned about it, but it's a different type of concern. Like with this, anybody in Tallahassee right now has to be thinking, oh my gosh, like this is going to hit us hard. Atlanta's eventually going to get hit as well. Parts of the western side of the Gulf side of Florida. It's a different thing because it's coming. It's going to hit hard. It's going to have damage. You just don't know how much, if you should leave. So it's interesting what makes your ears stand up.
I was talking to the dude earlier this week, Michael Vincent, and he was telling me, like in Chattanooga, they're supposed to they're predicting like 5 to 8 inches of rain.
Right.
For this weekend or something. Yeah.
Yeah, they're right in line with that. And so it's different in terms of kind of what makes you think twice about what's out there. But I mean, I've never been through a hurricane, so it's almost like I can't even appreciate it fully. I have been in an area where a tornado hit relatively close by. And when you see the destruction, you see how fast it happens and how devastating it is, you get a better appreciation for it. So unfortunately, I don't have a great appreciation for hurricanes, but I know that they're devastating. I hope everybody stays safe.
Yeah, I went through Katrina, right? And I keep on saying it was a tropical storm that just barely hit Category 1 when it came inland, right? And so I went through that in a hotel room in Boca Raton. It kind of shut down everything. I was prepared, had a couple pizzas and I had a couple cases of beer. To make sure that I had the supplies needed, and back then I was maybe 30 years old. So
the necessities,
yeah. Necessities, right? and everyone's kind of freaking out. I was kind of freaking out a little bit, but barely a Category 1 hurricane. It was, it was strange because it was windy, or sustained winds, but it was like 50 miles an hour or something, which is. Grew up in Oklahoma, that's like a spring day,
like breeze.
Yeah, I know, right? And there wasn't a lot of lightning, there wasn't a lot of thunder, right? So it wasn't like that those tornado storms that we see too, right? It wasn't quite as violent, right? But I got out right afterwards, and tree limbs all over the place. There's a lot of like wind damage and stuff. So I do appreciate that. I wouldn't want to go through anything worse. But it wasn't as bad as, but if you have sustained winds at 90 miles an hour for 12 hours or more,
that
wouldn't be very fun.
It's going to do some damage. That's right.
Yeah, it's going to do a lot of damage. So,
pretty wild. Well, how you guys doing? It's good to be here.
We're doing good. Just,
Casey, it's been a long time, my friend. It's great to see you, man.
It has been. It's been years, but it's a pleasure to reconnect.
I think my last stop and your last stop was the last time that we were really hanging out. So it's been almost 3 years for me in that regard.
Yeah, I was going to say, has it been 3 years since you started Beta?
January will be. Yeah.
January will be 3 years?
Yeah.
So for our audience out there doesn't know, this is Trey Griggs. He's the founder of Beta Consulting. And I'll let you do such a good job at introducing yourself. I see some special. Is that CGI?
There's special effects that we got here. We got all kinds of stuff for everybody around here. We got good stuff. Like this is just, we can get heavy metal with them if we want. There's a lot of stuff we can do here.
Oh wow!
The power of being a MacBook owner. I'm a big Apple fan, big MacBook fan. It's all built in. It's pretty cool.
Is it really?
Yep, sure is.
I did not know you do that. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Your elevator pitch. All that good stuff.
Well, companies oftentimes don't have a great sales engine and great structure around sales, especially in terms of their view of sales and marketing and how they work together. So I work with companies to put that together to accelerate sales and to help their salespeople more effective. I often equate it to this. If you follow football, I'm a big Patrick Mahomes fan. He's a phenomenal talent. But I don't think he's the same guy, the same player, if he's drafted by the New York Jets instead of the Chiefs in 2017. The New York Jets didn't have structure. They didn't have a coaching staff that really knew what they were doing. Their leadership and the organization was not great. We're still seeing some of that play out today, even with Aaron Rodgers over there. But you put Patrick Mahomes in a great system, in a great organization with great leadership and structure and all of that, and he can maximize his talent. I think the same thing is true for sales professionals out there. You hire a sales professional that knows what they're doing, but you give them no structure and no system, they're eventually going to get burnt out. They're not going to be able to move as fast as you'd like them to move. They're going to have to create a lot of the marketing collateral that supports sales instead of just going out and selling and having what they need. And so I'm working with companies to build that structure so when they have great salespeople, they can maximize their talent, drive more revenue, close sales faster, shorten the sales cycle, educate customers, have customers speaking on their behalf, all those things that just make sales significantly easier.
It does. It does. It brings up some interesting questions too. I see Casey might have a question.
Yeah, the wheels are turning over there. I can tell.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's the classic trope, right? Sales and marketing and that relationship or the lack thereof. It's I think a super valuable piece of the puzzle, right? To connect those dots. I think I had something certainly more substantial to say, but
well, may I tag on what I was saying, because I had one more thing to share with that, because this is really interesting. In my time working with my clients, especially the founders, what I've found is that most founders are not salespeople, and yet a new company has to be led by founder-led sales. Like a founder has to be able to sell. And so a lot of founders are really good at ideas, are really good at creating a product. They struggle with sales. And if they do figure out sales, which I'm helping a lot of founders right now with their sales process, but if they do figure out sales, once they start to hire a sales team, it's a different process, because a salesperson that you hire has a different story, has a different level of commitment and conviction and passion for the product, understanding of the product, the story that they tell, it's different. And so there's a structure and a strategy for founders on sales that I'm helping founders build out their sales and get better at it, and get, training them on that, what to say, how to have structure and using a CRM, because a lot of them haven't even used a CRM before, because they're not a salesperson, they're an inventor, they're a creator, they're a technologist, whatever it might be. And so helping them along with that has been really fun. But what I've noticed is that what a company needs in round two, which is not founder-led sales, whenever you start hiring people, they need even more structure and more collateral in place to accelerate their sales. They need to have a story in place. They need to know what that story is and be speaking that story, speaking directly to the problem that a customer has. So it's been fun to be a part of these journeys with companies, whether they're brand new and they're founder-led sales, or they're transitioning to more of a sales organization and need help with that structure as well.
Yeah. These are one of those things, especially with founder sales, right? Because these are two very interesting concepts, right? And it goes back to the systems and sports, and which is the way it should be. Is a lot of the job of the founder, especially if you're going to scale up scales, is building a product that is, I want to say sellable, but that's a little tongue in cheek, right? Something that lends itself for other people besides you to go out and sell it. And I'm making a mincemeat out of this analogy now, or not even an analogy, but exactly what I'm thinking, right? Is like a founder goes out, blood, sweat, tears, knows it inside and out, but you need a product and a story that you can hire anybody off the street to go out and be successful selling what you built.
That's right.
That's a better way to put it, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. But they're two different things. And I think that sometimes founders are afraid of sales because they haven't done it. And sales is not easy. I mean, let's just be honest. It's not easy It takes you kind of have to train that muscle. And if that muscle hasn't been trained, you have to do that. But I think that founders who embrace it do best because they're the ones that spend the most time with their prospective customers and their customers, building the product, making it better, and really understanding the pain points that these customers have. And once they do that, then they can hire somebody and teach them the system or teach them what they've learned. But the product should be at that point pretty mature, pretty dialed in for the market where it is today. Obviously, if it's a technology product, it'll probably continue to mature and grow.
Yeah.
But to your point, Kevin, you've created a product that you know the market needs and wants and will pay for because you've gone through the process, the sales process of pitching customers, hearing feedback, adjusting things, all the things that need to happen there. And then you have to be able to turn that over. And that's also where story really comes into play. A founder has a unique story because they've either lived the experience or they knew somebody who was living the experience and they built this product and they're passionate about it and so on and so forth. But then when that founder hires you or me to sell the product, we don't have any of that experience. We don't have any of that background. So we need to know what the story is. What's the story that a prospect is going to be engaged, that's going to engage a prospect to want to know more and to make the decision to buy that product. And that's, again, where I think a lot of companies don't take the time to think through that. All great sales and marketing starts with storytelling.
Yes.
It really does. You need that storytelling because the person that you bring in isn't going to know the product, right? Isn't going to have all the sweat equity and all the reasons to live, breathe it, be it. So you have to hand them a story. You have to hand them something to be successful with. And people with a hustle and people with those abilities can go out and be successful. But I find oftentimes companies don't do that, right? You have to figure it out in a sales role. You have to figure out all yourself on your own. And it could be wildly different than what management thinks. And whether you're successful or not, sometimes you get in trouble for that.
Yeah. And my experience that I've had in this very situation is I started my career at DAT, and that was when I was living in Portland. I started there in 2012, and they had it down at that point. They had the market, they had marketing, they had a brand. And I remember that the training that I had there, I got to give them a ton of credit. I trained for a month before they let me touch a phone. I mean, I learned about the company. I learned about the products that they sold. I learned about the target markets. I learned how to use the CRM. I worked on the pitch. We did, practice pitching and all those types of things to where when I got on, into the seat and started dialing, I kind of felt like I knew what I was doing and I had the story down and I did really well. From there, I went to startups. I went to 2 different startups after that and they had nothing. They had nothing. In fact, one startup that I went to, the founder was doing the sales and had built a decent business out of that, and then started hiring salespeople. And the strategy at that time was, I'm just going to hire experienced salespeople in the industry who have a network, who have been around, and then they'll just figure it out. And we spent a lot of time figuring out the marketing side instead of selling because there was nothing there. The pitch deck wasn't there. The CRM wasn't set up the way, the most efficiently. There was not much of a story outside of the founder's story, and that didn't really do us much good. We were using Salesforce completely incorrectly. Every contact that we came in touch with became an opportunity. That's not true. Not every contact that you talk to at a trade show is an actual opportunity. It's a lead. We weren't using it correctly. We were using notes for everything, and you cannot report or search notes. So all this data was just being siloed in these little bubbles within these records, and everything was an opportunity. Like all this, none of this stuff was figured out. And so we had to spend time figuring that out instead of selling. And so this is why it's so important for founders to have a partner, either know somebody that knows sales really well who will come on board, or will coach them and help them out, and then will help to develop this structure so that when they are ready to hire somebody, there are things in place and that person can be successful. If you hire a salesperson with none of this in place, you're slowing them down. They're going to be frustrated. They're eventually going to get burnt out and they're going to leave. And that's actually what happened at the startups that I was at. Nobody stayed. Yep. Because after a while we realized we weren't selling. We were building the structure of this thing and we weren't making as much money, and it just wasn't a good situation. It wasn't ideal.
For sure. The training piece is huge. That's something that I'm really lucky to have had an experience with. When I started working at FreightWaves, there was so much experience in the office, and I got paired up with a guy named Dale Stewart, who had come up in the transportation industry, had worked at US Express for 10, 15, 20 years, all different types of operational roles. He had been with FreightWaves working on the blockchain and transportation alliance team doing sales for a couple of months before I joined. I was very green, right? But had the opportunity to sit next to him, join all of his calls. He had a process, right? Like, I think something that's really interesting is, and Trey, you kind of maybe hinted at it a little bit, talking about your experience with one of those first two startups where you've got a great founder story, but you got to have some sales and you got to have a way to help the new people that you bring in to grow those sales channels. They've got to have a compelling story as well. They got to have a process, just like you have to have a process to build a great product, right? I think sometimes it can be easy to say, okay, I'll just hire a really experienced sales guy with a big network, and he'll sell. But if there's not like a organizational process set up to service that sale, and if the sales guy isn't given, some type of story and hopefully, right, like a rubric for what a typical kind of sales process looks like, what the common objections are from, the ideal customer, or the different types of customers, right, or prospects that you might deal with, super valuable. And I don't know what the hell would have happened to me if, I joined FreightWaves 2 years later and we were in this totally virtual world where, you don't really have an opportunity to be in the office, be on the floor and pick up those tidbits. So I know that this has kind of changed a little bit since, I guess probably the three of us joined the workforce, but those are just kind of my.
And one of the things you brought up, Casey, is, and I'm sure Trey sees this, and we all have our observations on this, is especially in like startups, it's like, okay, we need to hire a sales team. We'll hire 5 people, they'll figure it out, and that's it, right? That's how you grow sales. It's just hire more people, and it's you have to know your ICP. You have to know what that means. You have to have the story, right?
Yeah.
You have to have those things.
Let me share something else too that I noticed too, and this is the hard part about it with startups, especially, is when you do start hiring a sales team. I think some people have made the mistake of hiring individual contributors with no leadership. That's a problem. Some have hired an individual contributor and made them also the leader, a player coach. That's a problem. It would be like starting a baseball team with no manager. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. It'd be like starting a baseball team with a player manager. That also doesn't work. I mean, how many successful people in the 130-year history of Major League Baseball have been successful player coaches? I can only think of one who did it. I think Pete Rose did it for just a little bit, and I don't know that he was great at it. And so when you think about a sales organization, it is hard because it's an investment, but it is critical that you hire somebody who has the potential and experience to actually lead a team. And when it's time to build a team, they lead the team. They do not have their own quotas, because this is also a problem. At the end of the month, if I have an individual quota, but I'm also supposed to be leading 4 other people, who am I going to give my attention to? I'm going to hit my individual quota, because that's how that's a big part of how I get paid. That's that's the expectation. But if my entire job is to make sure that all of you hit your quotas, well, now I'm actually going to give you the time and coach you and spend time with you and jump on calls with you and be available. And I don't have my own quotas to hit. Now that's more expensive because you're hiring somebody to manage who's not actually going to throw any pitches or hit any, get any hits. But it's important to have a non-producing sales leader on your team. Like, that is so critical. I see it fall short when you try to do both. Now, you can hire somebody to be an individual contributor who has some leadership experience with the intention that they're going to roll into leadership when it's time to hire more people, and you make that transition. But you have to have a plan to make that transition. I've just seen this coach leader situation not be successful too many times. Maybe some people can do it. I feel like it's the exception. Michael Sternberg, what's up?
Yeah, Michael. Michael Sternberg. I need to talk to Michael. I haven't talked to
Hopefully, I
him in a long
kind of
time.
answered that question for you a little bit. You hire somebody with leadership experience who's willing to be an individual contributor, learn the process, grow the process, and then you make that transition as they hire somebody else as quickly as possible, because it's really, in my opinion, if you're going to scale, it's really important to have somebody who's leading the team and not having their own quota to hit.
I think that is important for scale, right? It is, and it's important to have that process, to build a process. The process is much more important than how many salespeople you have, right?
You could have, if you have a great process, one person can do as much as sometimes two. This is an interesting. This is an anecdotal story, but this is interesting. So if I go back to my DAT experience, I was like you, Casey. I was super green. I went from being a school teacher and a youth pastor to I did door-to-door sales for 15 months to cut my teeth on sales. All right, so that's all I had. I had that experience. I get to DAT. I know nothing about transportation. I know nothing about freight brokerage. I can't even fathom what an integration is. Like the idea, I kept hearing this word integration. I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't even know. Like doesn't even register in my world. But because of the training and the structure and the system that they had, I ramped up faster than any sales rep they'd had to that point. Maybe somebody's beat that since that time, but in that first 12 months or the first 10 months that I was a rep, I led the team 5 months. And I was one of 9, and I was the newest guy. But the training was so good. I have to give so much credit to Janice Compton for that. The training was so good that I ramped up really fast. And my natural talent for sales was amplified because of the structure and the system and the story that we were telling. And obviously they had a good brand, but that brand was equal for all of us on the sales team. So there was something about my training that helped me really succeed. Now, fast forward to the startups that we went to, I was on a team with 4 guys that had a great track record in sales in this industry. All 4 of us, very talented individuals, and we struggled. We struggled because there was no system in place, and 3 of us left 2 of us left within a year, and 3 of us were gone within 18 months of starting. Because we were building this out, and there's no structure, no system. And so all that to say, that's my experience. That's kind of what I've seen. Now I know, let's see, who else had a comment? Michael had a comment. To find someone. Yeah.
I also think that is overvalued, right? People with experience, people with networks is overvalued, and the process that they walk into is undervalued.
Yes.
Dramatically, right?
Yeah. You end up paying a lot of money for those people, and they expect leads to be coming their way, and they are not coming their way.
It's kind of, if we go back to sports, right? It's the superstar mentality. We'll sign a superstar and turn the team around.
Yeah. Cleveland Browns.
Right? And it doesn't work like that. And you go back to the Bill Belichick of systems, right? You have great people. You need great people in there, but you need a system to begin with.
Right. And you define like what being a friggin' patriot is, right? Like what are the acceptable
culture?
Culture. He's spending time with the A players, right? Like he doesn't have any time of day for the C and D players, right? Like they've got a very clear expectation of, what you need to do to get the football. Like you fumble the football, you're sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
Like that's unacceptable. And they know that, right? So like having, I think, a clearly defined culture and, making sure that you are helping probably, your best salespeople and kind of building that culture where, I don't know, I think I've seen it in the past sometimes, if you've got somebody who's a home run hitter, right? Let that guy be the home run hitter. And then the manager ends up spending a lot of time helping other sellers on the team that, need more help. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, because there's something about culture and systems that makes a difference. Because if you go back to the Patriots and now look at the Chiefs, they're kind of following that model. Mm-hmm. Players are willing to take less money. What was that, Casey? What was that?
Really quickly become Patriots fans.
Those players, though, the great players were willing to take less money and work harder because they could be a part of a winning organization. Mm-hmm. And if you equate that to, a company scenario, you have to define what a win looks like. Is that more of a commission payout potentially for the team or individually? Is that equity options or stake in the company? If that's what a win looks like, what is it that they're really working towards a win? But, great players, when they see a great culture and a great system and a great team, will take less and work harder. That's a crazy thought, because most sports you see take the most and work the least. That seems to be a very common thing. Like we always kind of say, well, when somebody gets paid, oh, well, they're going to get lazy now. And they often do. They often decide to work a little bit, not as hard. I mean, Dak Prescott, I don't know what's going on with that guy, but he's got paid $60 million a year. And he's kind of subpar right now. I don't know if he's not working hard, if he's feeling the stress. I don't know what the deal is, but you're not getting as much out of him as you are some of the people that are taking less money. And so it's an interesting kind of concept. But it's culture. That goes back to culture, and it goes back to a winning team and a system and a structure. And I want to bring up one other topic real quick around this. I think a lot of companies struggle with this, and that is, let's say that you have an organization that's led by a CEO or a founder, and he's the sales leader. Maybe he or she is a salesperson. Okay, so they're leading the organization, but eventually they need to hire a sales leader who's full-time focused on growing the team. What do most companies do with their 5 sales reps? Who do they pick usually?
Oh, the best performer.
They pick the best performer.
Yeah.
Why? That is the wrong mentality. Think about this. Let's just go back to sports for a minute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Would Michael Jordan ever be a great head coach in basketball?
No.
Magic Johnson? No.
No.
Like Larry Bird, kind of, but he didn't win a championship.
Can you imagine Barry Bonds?
But no, like
You know what I mean, like
who are the great coaches? They're good players who are team oriented, who have the ability to coach and train and lead. Steve Kerr, average player, won several championships, great coach. Phil Jackson, average player, don't even know if he won a championship, great coach. Pat Riley, average player, great coach. Look at the people who are Major League Baseball. Like Craig Counsell was a great coach for the Brewers. Average player, great coach. In a sales organization, the person who's sitting, like let's say there's 10. Somebody that's sitting in 3 to 5 is probably the best leader moving forward. They know how to do the job, but they're probably also helping new people. They're thinking about other people. They're serving. The person at the top is just an individual contributor who's killing it on their own. Let them keep killing it and make more money. And think about this. If we go to the sports analogy, who makes more on a sports team? The great coach, Steve Kerr, or the great player?
Great player.
Great player does.
Great player.
So in an organization, if you're paying your sales leader more than your top contributor, you are incentivizing the top contributor to become a leader, and that's probably not where they're going to thrive.
It's not going to be, because they have the natural ability to where it comes easier to them than anybody else. We go back to sports. Michael Jordan he just had the ability, right?
Yeah.
You want somebody who doesn't have that natural ability, who's had to figure it out in his head, who has had to struggle to even make it. You talk about baseball managers. I mean, most of them barely made appearances in the major leagues, right?
Right.
They're a contributor for 3 years and never was a starter, right?
Right. I mean, think about Andy.
They made it that far with subpar ability just because they knew the game.
Yeah, Andy Reid's the same way. He was I think an offensive lineman in the league for a few years, several years, but he's a phenomenal coach, And so I think that when you think about that, your sales leader should make a good living, but they should not be making more than your top contributors because you're incentivizing the wrong thing. And when your top contributors know that they're the ones that are going to get fed the most because they're bringing in the revenue the most, they're the star athlete, they're drawing, the revenue, then I think you get a healthy organization. But too often the sales leader gets paid more than the top contributor, and you're incentivizing the top contributor to become a leader, and they often don't have the right skills for that.
Yep. I would say more than often.
Yeah.
Almost always.
I didn't want to say always. I hate to say always. That word never. But often or almost, or
there's
always.
completely different skill sets. Skill sets, right?
I mean, I think about it like this. Like, I like doing sales. I think I'm very qualified to do sales. I've done really well in places that I've been, but I love coaching. When I was at Lean, this was actually probably one of the more joyous experiences of my career. When I was at Lean, I wasn't the sales leader. I wasn't like in charge of the guys in that regard, but I was like the sales enablement coach. So I was getting the CRM set up so it worked efficiently. I was making sure that they could send out an agreement very quickly and get it signed fast, that everything that they had was in place, that they had the slide deck in place, that they knew the story, that we were working through all that. And, during that time, we have to give credit to COVID, unfortunately, because COVID was a big multiplier in that business model.
Yep.
But I will say that when I started there, their top contributors were closing 1 to 2 deals a month. And by the time that, we had got everything in place, everybody was doing 5, 6, 7 deals. The top people were doing 10, 12 deals a month, and they were making a lot of money. And it was cool to see. Like, it was not only the market forces, but it was also the fact that they could just move faster and that they had structure in place and they were able to make more money. And so the top reps there, Nick Strober and Hunter Bell at that time were the top reps. They were making really good money, and it was cool to see them being successful, and just putting the things in place to make them successful was a lot of fun. And that's what a sales leader, sales enablement coach, that's what your job should be, is to, just like a manager, you want to put the right people in the game at the right time in the right positions so that the team can win, and that so that they can win, they can be successful. And I see it the same way.
Yep. It really is. Casey? Thoughts?
I mean, it's yeah, it's absolutely critical, right? Like, give your guys the tools to be successful. I mean,
The big things is that you have to put your ego in check, right? And that's top performer, right? That they like the spotlight.
they do.
They like the wins, right? Internal, external, it doesn't really matter. They just like to win, and it's hard to take the spot for them to take the spotlight off themselves, and because it's hard when you go from contributor, right, where you can really detail what you're doing, to a leader, a manager, where everybody else is doing something directly, and all your activities kind of indirectly. It's coaching.
Right.
It's making sure that they're in the right spot to win. It's hard to quantify that sometimes.
Yeah, coaches don't get to take any more shots. They don't get to throw any more passes.
Yeah.
They're on the sideline. And I think of it this way as well. When I was in high school, I was in band. I played French horn, the most beautiful instrument in the orchestra, by the way. If you listen to a song, it's absolutely breathtaking. Not the way I played it, just in general. I'm just saying in general. But I played in the full orchestra, and our conductor at that time, our leader, was a man named Kurt Mosier, and he's out of Raytown, out of Kansas City. And he's written symphonies, and he has gone all over the world to conduct these symphonies at phenomenal orchestras all across the world. Didn't know what we had at the time. I didn't know how talented he was, but I remember this. He could play every string instrument, violin, viola, cello, bass. He could play every one of them, and he could play many of the wind instruments like the brass and woodwinds and whatnot. He could play all the instruments, but he never got to play them. Like, he could come and show us how to play them. Like, he was amazing. He'd come out and just play it better than we could play it, which was incredibly impressive and amazing. But he never played the instruments, especially in a performance. He went his whole career conducting and putting people in place and coaching them and teaching them. And that's what a sales leader is. They're the conductor. They don't get to play the instruments anymore. They might come out every once in a while, jump on a sales call, help out with things, get to do a few things, of course, talk to people at trade shows and do their thing, that type of stuff. But for the most part, they're the conductor now. They need to conduct the symphony and make sure that everybody's playing in harmony.
Yep. That's a tough thing to do.
It is.
It is.
So.
Well, as good as their incentive structure, right? I think that's one of the takeaways that I had from this book, Secrets of Sand Hill Road, about VC out in Silicon Valley. But yeah, I don't know. Trey, you're mentioning, what is it? Is it a mixture of equity and commission? Probably. Right?
I think it depends on the company. I mean, obviously for a newer company, giving some ownership to the company could be a way to incentivize people to come on board, and you maybe don't have to pay them quite as much at first, because capital is difficult, especially if you're bootstrapping. It is difficult. I get that. So that could definitely be a part of it. For some larger companies, maybe that's only for leadership positions or leadership teams in that regard, or maybe it's for top performers only. Maybe there's a higher threshold for that. But I think it just depends on what you're trying to go after. If you're trying to scale and have volume, then you may just have to look at the structure and figure out what's going to be the best way to incentivize people. I know for us, I mean, the best experience I had as a individual contributor was at DAT. And I just remember the structure there was like, when you looked at the top performers at DAT, about a fifth of their income was base salary, and the rest of it was commission. But they had a very sellable product. We were able to do a lot of volume on that. I mean, if you think about it, everybody who buys a truck, their second call is DAT. You know, you start a brokerage after you get your bond in place. Your next call is DAT. So, you know, it was a product that you could sell in high volume if you just had I mean, I felt like it was super easy. I made friends with people, asked them what they wanted, tried to upsell them one level, and then ask what credit card they wanted. So volume play there was like really big deal. So we were able to do that. If you're in a situation where there's not as much volume, it's a longer sales cycle, it's a harder sell, it's a newer sell, you know, you probably might have to pay more on the base to get people to do it because it's just not easy. And then maybe transition that over time, kind of change that over time. But it's always hard to change the base salary down after you've given a high base salary. So equity can sometimes help with that because you're giving them a future payout later on, depending on how successful we are.
Right. And then one other thing that I think is really interesting, sorry, Kev, this quick, is the feedback loop from sales, right? You know, giving them the tools to be successful is great, cool. You know, making sure that your organization can take the feedback back, communicating with the customers, and really have, you know, the most hands-on feel to the problems that, you know, you guys are trying to solve, whatever that problem is. You know, I think making sure that you have a way to get feedback from customers through your sales team to figure out how to evolve, probably another great way to keep your sales team happy so that they can keep customers happy.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And I totally forgot what I was going to say earlier, which is no big surprise, really. So
I blame that on kids. That's from having kids. It just the simple stuff just goes right out there. It just goes
it
right
really does. It really does. So what was it? It was about process again, you know, because I'm harping on that. It's you know what? I think one of the things that startups, why sales and marketing and that setup is so important, and what they should realize, and it goes into that mix of equity versus salary, is like no one knows your name, no one knows what you do, for the most part, right? Or very limited, you know, as complete opposite of that, right? It's probably going to take longer to get anyone up to speed on the phone, doing demos, and actually closing deals and collecting money
without a doubt
than you think about. Whatever you budget, you have to extend that, and you have to navigate those waters, for lack of a better word, right? Because you're going to, you know, that goes into base versus commission versus, you know, because sometimes it takes 12 to 15 months.
Yeah.
For sales to really come in, depending on what the ticket price is,
right?
How much customization is, and you know, I mean,
And you make a good point, and that is you hire some salespeople. Nobody knows who you are really. You probably don't have much of a brand. The market is not educated on what you do, and you hire somebody who has a network, and then they spend all their time doing that education, doing that marketing and promotion.
Yes. Yeah.
A better plan would be to start doing some marketing, little marketing here and there. Sending out some, you know, creating an email list and starting to send out emails to educate your audience.
Market before you even build the product.
Yeah, just
market well before that.
Talk about the problem. You can talk about the problem before you have a product.
Yeah.
You can raise this issue in the minds of people before you even have a product that works. And that's powerful, you know, because again, I always tell people this with storytelling. The first part of storytelling is knowing who you're talking to, who the audience is, and what is their problem. And sometimes they know they have a problem and you can talk about it and they'll resonate. Sometimes they don't know they have a problem. Yes. One of those that I'm working with right now is, I don't know if you guys know Marina Brown over at Maniva.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So she's building a product that is based around the money and time that is lost on accessorial management. So a lot of times detention is not, approved in the moment. So then you have to go after the load is delivered and try to figure out what happened. Is there a lot of investigative work that goes on and trying to get customers to paying carriers. And this is a major problem for brokerages that just don't understand. They don't even know this is a major problem. They don't calculate how much time their team is spending doing that instead of booking freight or working with customers. Mm-hmm. They don't often know how much they don't recoup. And this is sometimes for an average size brokerage that's doing, 5,000 loads a month or so, 4,000 loads a month. This is a $500,000 to $1 million annual problem just in the money that's not recovered. Now you tack on the fact that carrier sales reps have to spend like 15 to 20% of their time each week investigating these things and trying to get paperwork and figure it all out just to get it paid. You're just wasting so much time and money on this problem. A lot of people don't even recognize they have it. So with Marina, we're doing a lot of education in the market and telling people how big of a problem this is. Shining a spotlight on something that just has been in the dark for a long, long time, almost like a cost of doing business kind of feel. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way.
And that's great advice, right? Just talk about the problem. If you don't want to talk about your solution yet, that's fine. But you can always talk about the problem, and just getting your name out there before you even have something finished is so valuable that I can't even put it in words how valuable that is, because it takes a long time. You always think you think that it's difficult in a task to build a product, and it is.
Yeah.
There's the sales and marketing function of getting that out and getting that sold is just as Herculean of a task as building that product.
It is. And if you get the market to understand the problem and to understand eventually that there is a solution, that you have a solution, you're working on a solution, whatever it is, then when you bring a salesperson in, the market is already primed. Yeah. And a lot of times we forget that. I think about a company like Highway. Not every company does everything right, but they've done a lot of things right. I think that Jordan did a great job at the beginning of talking about the problem of carrier identity.
Yep.
Like, this is the real problem. It's actually identifying the carrier and knowing who's at the party. And so they talked about that problem for a long time. Probably for the first year, they just talked about that problem over and over again. And then they brought in Michael Caney, who was an operator and who was a sales scaler, to put in the structure for sales. And then they brought in seasoned salespeople into that structure. And it's no surprise, Highway is killing it. They're doing a phenomenal job in the marketplace. Their market share is through the roof. They're doing a great job. It's because they follow that system, and that's something that is very repeatable. Companies can do that. They often just don't know how to do it. They've never done it before. They don't know what it takes. And companies like Highway have done that very, 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 very well.
Yep. The message has been on point, and I think that's a good case study for all startups out there. You think of Highway, you know exactly what problem that addresses, what that use case is, right? There's no ambiguity to it, which you find in a lot of tech companies, right? It's like, how exactly am I supposed to use this?
What do you do?
And you want to cut through that and say, this is exactly how you use it.
Highway is carrier identity. Yeah, like Google is search. Exactly.
That's
the problem.
And they've stayed incredibly focused on that problem and that identity, which has been really, really good for them. So
it's really hard to do, especially when we're solving super duper complex problems in the space with a lot of times like engineer type, Mensa level geniuses. Think a lot faster than 99% of folks. So connecting those dots and helping folks understand how super complex piece of tech or makes
when you have early customers that come in and say, hey, it'd be great if it does this, right? And then all of a sudden you've completely lost your focus and you're trying to
does that align
these rabbit holes?
Does that align here with what we're doing? Is the market taking us in a different direction we should pay attention to, or should we not pay attention to? Those are very critical leadership strategic decisions. And let me throw one last thought your way for anybody who's listening to this, especially for the founders out there who are trying to scale a company and trying to think about where they're going to put their resources, whether they're bootstrapping dollars, or whether they are funded and they've got some dollars, but you need to think really wisely about this. A lot of times, especially for companies that are building technology, but for all companies, they think about VC money or they think about funding, and all they think about is development, like product, like building that out, but they don't set aside resources for the sales and marketing side of things, for either working with an outsourced agency or consultant to work on those, or to hire somebody who knows how to build these things out, or whatever it is. Like, it's really important when you think about your budget, when you think about, raising money, for example, for technology. I can't tell you how many companies I've talked to in the last year who raised money for their scaling. I'm like, how are you going to use that money? What are you going to do with it? And the majority of it is development. A majority of it is that. And I get it. That's important. But if you don't set aside money to build your sales and marketing engine, you're going to be behind the curve. You're not going to have an audience. You're not going to have, people that even know what you're doing. So I think it's really important that they think through that and say, okay, I need to budget dollars for this so that I can either work with an agency, work with a consultant, or hire somebody direct who knows how to build this, so that as the product is developing, you're also building the audience at the same time.
because build it and they will come is the greatest myth that ever entered the vernacular of business.
Yeah. You know,
It is.
Woods, there's nobody there. Does it make a sound? Right? Like having cool tech is just it's only cool tech, but
Yeah.
no matter.
Do you guys? Let me give one example here to close out. Do you guys remember when Dollar Shave Club came on the market?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so think about this. Dollar Shave Club created blades significantly less expensive than Gillette, right? But they didn't go viral until they came up with a commercial that went viral and told everybody about it. So they had this warehouse, they had this product, they had, you know, blades that were good, that were less expensive. But had they not launched that commercial, and anybody can look this up, you can go on YouTube and type in Dollar Shave Club launch commercial. It's hilarious. It's about 90 seconds long. The founder of it, Mike, I don't know his last name, but the founder of it did this commercial in a warehouse, and just it's a classic commercial. And from that commercial, they got 12,000 orders in a 48-hour time stretch because it went viral. Had they not done that commercial and just hoped that people would spread the word of mouth, it would have taken a lot longer. Or they not done any marketing at all, it would have taken longer. You can build something really great, but if nobody knows about it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
And if they don't know about it, you become poor every single day
Right.
because you're paying out and not bringing in.
That's exactly right.
Zero. Okay, so we need to wrap it up. Any parting thoughts, Trey? How does
Well,
our
Jay, you
audience
guys
get a hold of
just
you?
get to hop on the show. It's always good to be with you guys and to talk to our industry. I love this industry. I love being a part of it. It's a joy to do that. And if anybody has questions about their sales process, want a sales audit, need some coaching along those lines, you can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Send me a DM. I answer all those myself. Or go to our website, betaconsultinggroup.com. Click on the link in the top fold that says schedule call. That'll come directly to me, and we'll be on a call, and we can get conversing about your company and figure out how we can help. So LinkedIn, Twitter, DM, or go to our website and book a call.
We're going to be live again in a half an hour. Trey and myself on the road to the summit, the BCS
right.
Broker Carrier Summit. So look up LinkedIn, tune in for that.
That's right. Come back for that. That's right. We're going to have a good
Right.
time talking about that. Thanks, guys.
Cool. You bet.
See you, Trey.
Well, Casey, another episode down. Any parting thoughts?
All right, yeah, 21. Parting thoughts.
Process.
Process. And the best brands are the ones that are selling to the 99% of the audience that's not ready to buy at the moment.
Yes.
Right? If the prospective buyer who's got budget doesn't have it for you at the moment, can have some assumptions made about who you are, what you do for folks, how you might make their life easier. It really shortens sales cycles and makes everybody's life a lot easier. It can give the sales peeps you have what they need to do what you hired them for.
Do what you hired them. Yep, exactly. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. We'll be back next Thursday morning, or are we going to do afternoons? I know we've talked about it.
I'm definitely game to push to the afternoon. It might be a better time.
Okay, we'll be here Thursday. We'll be here Thursday at some point, and you'll get an invite in your box. So,
for sure.
With that, everyone have a great end to the week and go out and make some sales. Book some freight. Do some good.
For sure.